I would like to add something when it comes to Marcus, your
Yeah,
strategy.
bro, hit me.
I think your strategy is a lot more advanced what people are thinking here. It's not like a fast escalation game. It's just what you
No.
tweak it to. You just tweak it to become fast escalation. Because if we're going to look at psychological theories, rooted in how human beings can evolve in certain things. When it comes to women, in order for them to be open for a lot of things, we need to obtain a certain amount of safety and trust first. Unless we have obtained a certain amount of safety and trust, they won't pursue further with anything, basically. So when we look at safety and trust, back in the days, 10,000 years ago, that was protecting them with a spear, for example, against predators and so on. But we do have something called prefrontal cortex, and we do have something called neuroplasticity in our brain that makes us modern, so to speak. And when we look at the modern world today, we can see that the safety and trust for women is much more based on emotional safety and trust. And if we look at can we create emotional safety and trust, well, that is through understanding. So when you're talking with women, Marcus, at the club and so on, you're going with sort of a discovery question to see where you're at. And then when you have something, you're just going to use all the context you can, all the context you can to lean towards fast escalation. You see, because when she feel understood, for example, like the way that you basically came in and you reflect back by saying, you seems to be a really independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
And bam, then based on that, you go in and tweaking it towards fast escalation. But just by saying
100%.
that and continue with that, she will feel like that guy gets me.
Yeah, that's
Marcus gets
exactly
me.
what I want. Yeah,
He
that's
gets me.
that's
And once
exactly what I
she,
want. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But once you actually get into the era like, oh, that guy gets me, and then suddenly you go into quite fast escalation, you are still within the empathetic depth. Because empathy is not the same as compassion. Empathy is just understanding the other person from their perspective. Once you have that perspective of hers, like she's an independent woman, and what comes to an independent woman's mind in this particular area? Well, first, all the guys are probably pussies, right? I mean, you're an independent woman, you know what you want. And then when you look at the guys, they cannot even do anything, even if they want, they are pussies, or whatever kind of association you do. Then what you're doing is you're going to reflect that and anchor that kind of opposite feeling towards yourself. And then you start fast escalating, like you are different. And one of the main things is like, you go into a woman, I can imagine you go into, I've done it myself, when you go into clubs and bars and you're talking with a woman that is really attractive, you have the mindset of like, I don't care which guys you have met all over your life, during your life, I don't care. But with me, you don't get away. I see you and I hear what you're saying and you don't get away with me. And what you hear she's saying, you take that and you just going to continue, you're going to pivot on that. And whether you're doing it to create connection and relationship, or you're going to use sexual escalation for that, so be it. But that is actually, like a fork of interpersonal communication skills in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. Like, this is why I don't like using the word escalation, because I think it implies that you're basically being on with the girl. Like, a lot of guys, when people hear escalation, it's basically like, how do I be more physical, right? They don't think about their words, or if they do think about their words, it's basically like, how do I convey to her that I want to have sex with her? So it's things like a compliment, or it's things like, I want to take you home, or I feel like this emotion towards you. Whereas, as you said, like, I see it about building that sexual authority. And I love that you said, he gets me. That's what I want to achieve. I want to achieve basically
Yeah.
like this guy understands me on a sexual level. And when you're talking about men to women dynamics, that's one of the deepest levels you can actually accomplish is understanding someone on a sexual level. And then when you have that level of authority, that level of trust, you almost come into it as an expert. She's going to be much more open to talking about her pleasures and what she's into. Because if you're just some random guy and you're like, hey, how do you like to be sexed? You're just going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Whereas if you say like, look, this is my experience, I understand you, right, I get you, then from that you lead to, okay, and tell me more about this. Tell me more about exactly what you want. Tell me more about what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Now you're entering a situation. I just think about it as like understanding a fantasy because
Mm,
when I have sex with her, I do sex coaching too, is I want it to be an amazing experience. And for it to be an amazing experience, I need to know what this girl likes and what she wants. Because if she has, the example I always give is she's got like a foot fetish, okay? You can
mm,
be like an average guy in bed with a really small dick, but now if you just like touch her feet, she's gonna have the best time of fucking life, right? Now it's a weird example, but
mm.
the more common ones are gonna be like maybe she likes to be choked, talked down to, whatever it might be. You get consent from this, you understand it. Now you can give her amazing time. Retention is going to be through the roof. She's definitely going to be a guy you want to see again. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of times a misunderstanding when people first hear about our game, which is, oh, it's just like brute force. I want to fuck you. Whereas as you kind of really succinctly identified here, it's more about understanding her and showing that you understand her as well. So
On the last panel, we had a great discussion about certain strategies, things to say in terms of, so for example, Casey Brown gave the example of, I'm putting into such terrible words, but he makes the assumption that the woman he's talking to, he could treat her like a princess, but in the bedroom dominate her. So, Marcus, what kind of questions or strategies in terms of things you say, do you adopt in order to extract that information to her in terms of identifying her kinds of kinks and what particularly attracts her in that context?
yeah, so the first two things I want to ensure is that she knows I have authority and she knows I'm not going to judge her. Because if you ask her any of the things I'm about to say, if she thinks that you're going to judge her for it, or she thinks you have no idea what you're talking about, she's not going to open up, right? So, first thing you want to show is that baseline level of like sexual understanding. You might want to actually verbally say some things like, you might want to talk about like other girls you've been with. You might want to have that energy that is sexual that Eric was spoken about before. Or you might just want to mention comments like, I like girls that are really open-minded. Like, hey, I've got a question for you. But before I ask it, you're not like one of these prudish girls, right? Like you're a little bit open-minded, right? So you can start to frame that a little bit. And then questions I like to ask is yeah, craziest thing you've ever done. You can move that sexual. You can ask her, like, I'm curious, what type of porn do you watch? You can say, like, hey, what's the craziest fantasy that you have? First thing that comes to your mind, right? To make it really simple. But yeah, these are usually going to be led through transition questions like, hey, have you had a boyfriend before? Yes, I have. Okay, what happened? She's like, oh yeah, we broke up a month ago. Why did he break up with you? No, he didn't break up with me. I broke up with him. Oh, how come? And she says like da da da. And I'm like, yeah, he probably seems like a little bit too soft for you, right? Like you probably need someone a little bit more masculine, a little bit more dominant. I can already see that. So you have these transition topics. You don't just want to be like, hey, my name's Marcus. What type of porn do you watch? But you lead into that. You set the right frame. You have her understand that you have authority around this, and then you can lead into these types of sexual topics.